everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Every week, photographers meet here to connect, inspire, and create. If you'd like to join us, you'll find the schedule for upcoming sessions on my website at lindanickell.com. Every week, a different guest shares their photography tips, an insight into their creative journeys, and they share the stories behind some of their favorite photographs. Tonight's guest is Donna McLin. Donna is a photography enthusiast that enjoys nature, wildlife, and traveling. Her Instagram feed is filled with beautiful photographs from her travels to Africa, Italy, and all over the United States. But some of her more challenging photographs come from her own Michigan backyard. In tonight's presentation, Life on the Ledge, Donna will share some of her favorite bird images and some pointers for moving away from feeder-focused shots to making photographs that are more natural in appearance. If you're on Instagram, you can find Donna at Donna McLin Pics. Welcome to the Happiness Hour, Donna.
Thank you, Linda.
And it's like welcome as a guest instead of an attendee. I love it. Somebody recently asked me, is there anyone that is immune from, getting roped into your gigs? And I'm like, nope, it's like my playground. So I don't remember, I think we may have talked about this, but I don't remember how you found the Happiness Hour. Can you tell us, how did you get here?
I think it was traced through the women's photography circle.
Oh, okay.
I saw something there and then just decided one night to click on it. And, about 2 years later, here we are.
I know this is, just the other day I was looking at, okay, so what she's referring to is it's a women's photography circle, and it was founded, I guess is the right word, by Beth Mancuso, who is out of Minnesota. And she started these Facebook pages for each state. So in Texas, I somehow, not through Beth, but through my other moderators, wrote to me and said, hey, Linda would be a great moderator. So I'm the bad cop on our page. I'm the, like, if you don't follow rules, you get an email from me. I know that Valerie Hoffman is the moderator for Pennsylvania. I don't know who else is in here. I think Christy from New Jersey. I don't think she's in here tonight, but Christy's a moderator for the New Jersey page. And there's a handful of other people that float through here. But yeah, so I do something very similar for our Texas meeting. I do a Zoom and I just have speakers come in. And just the other day, I realized I've done this for 2 years. They've just flown by. And for the Happiness Hour purposes, you are 190th speaker tonight. Is that crazy?
That is crazy.
I wanted to say something, and then I was like, I don't know. Maybe it's just my own little thing. But Karen Riley's in here. Valerie Hoffman's in here. Jama Pantel's not here tonight. Who else am I forgetting? Elaine Pruden and Aaron Randall. They all got roped into this, Happiness Hour idea. And April 1st, we began our 5th year doing this. So thank you all for coming in and supporting us. And I've been having fun. This is work for Elaine. Karen went from, hey, just hanging out and having pizza to like, oh my gosh, now we're doing photography. Oh, now we're doing a garden. She's starting a garden channel pretty soon. So we've all evolved in the last 4 years, but it's been a lot of fun for me. So what I often do is I reach into the audience and invite guests to come and do a presentation. And thank you for not putting up a fight, because there have been a few that I've had to wrangle, but ultimately I won.
I knew to fight would be meaningless. I wouldn't win.
I love it. That's exactly right. So you've all been warned. All right. I kind of glossed over an intro for you, like, because you don't have a website for me to stalk and extract from. But we've become, even though I've never met you in person, which is seems so weird because I feel like I know you. I've talked to you while you've driven, your on your road trips to going south because you're a snowbird during winter. We chat through DMs and Instagram. We email. So I feel like this is so weird that I don't know you in person. But what did I miss? Is there something that you want to deep dark photography secret you want to share?
I'll just say Jan and Denise do not pop in right now and say anything. When we get started into the presentation, I give a little bit of my background, but you'll see, kind of where I'm from and how I ended up in Michigan, because most people can't believe that I'm still in Michigan after having been retired for 3 years. So, but photography is just something that has been a part of my life really since childhood, and I stepped away from it for a while and then I came back.
I think you're not alone. A lot of people will say, I did it when I was a teenager and then I got busy with work or family, and then they're finding their way back to it, and the technology has changed so much, and that's been a good thing for a lot of people. But there's a few holdouts for they miss the film days. So all right, I'm going to stop jabbering and just let you get started, because I'm looking forward to seeing your photos. That I There's a few that I know that haven't made your Instagram feed, so this will be fun for me.
All right. Well, just to get started, I coined tonight's presentation Life on the Ledge, and it's really how a non-birder got hooked on bird photography. Linda mentioned that I don't have a website. I don't have a business webpage. Everything that I do in photography is just for the joy of doing it. And you can see my Instagram here, Donna McLin Pics. The very first night that I sat in on a happiness hour meeting, Linda asked about my Instagram. Do you have an Instagram? And I said, yeah, but I never post anything to it. I think I may have had 2 posts at that point in time. And through some wrangling and just feeling a little bit more confident in my photography and what I'm doing, I've started doing a lot more posting on Instagram. Not constantly, but when I feel good about something, then I will post it. I am a Louisiana girl who has ended up in Michigan. And when I'm asked the question, where are you from? I usually answer the question with a question. Do you want to know where I'm from or where I live? Because it's 2 different things. I am from Louisiana, spent the first 31 years of my life there, and I will always be from Louisiana. There's something about your home and where your heart is. But through career, I moved. Left Louisiana at 31 years old and went back to grad school. And then I've never lived back in Louisiana again, but it still is my home. I live currently, and for quite a long time now, since 1993, in West Michigan, in the greater Grand Rapids area, just north of Grand Rapids, represented by the little star there on the map there. And it's a nice place to live. I retired 3 years ago, and thus far I've chosen to remain in Grand Rapids, remain in the Michigan area, but there will come a point in time where I likely will find my way back south. Right after undergrad, when I completed undergrad, I finished my undergrad degree with a degree in physical education. And there was a time when there were many more people with degrees in education than there were open positions. And so the school year started after I had graduated in May, and I didn't have a teaching position, mainly because I wasn't willing to go to the land of the swamps, mosquitoes, and alligators in way, way South Louisiana. Baton Rouge was my home. So I ended up without this teaching position, and I had to come up with a way to support myself. So I turned a hobby into a career, and I started a small photography company that focused on event photography. It was actually, if any of you, age-wise, I'm going to age myself in many ways. It was a party picture business, and this is what the party pictures look like. And that's shots of me as a very young person. But the little company did a lot of Greek life events on 2 college campuses, corporate functions, a lot of high school dances and graduations. I've been to more proms and high school dances than I care to think about. I did some outdoor senior portraits, worked with some real estate companies, did a few weddings. I generally did weddings only in the summer because my busy time was during an academic school year with the other organizations. But I would pick up a few weddings just to keep a little income coming in the summer. My opinion about weddings usually depended on the mother of the bride of the last wedding that I shot as to whether or not I ever wanted to shoot another one. And then I also had my own darkroom and did my own black and white processing. It wasn't really until I sold that business. Let me back up. I sold that business. I went back to grad school in Indiana, which is how I ended up initially in the Midwest. Couple of job moves, find my way into Michigan in 1993. And Michigan is really a beautiful state. And once I moved here, I found myself really interested in getting back into photography, just strictly, if for nothing else, the beauty of the state. So I'll give a quick little ad on the state of Michigan for those of you who haven't spent time here. I know Valerie Hoffman has. It really is a beautiful state. It's bordered by 4 out of the 5 Great Lakes, and it has the longest freshwater coastline of anywhere in the world of over 3,200 miles. There's an abundance not only of the lakeshore with the Great Lakes, but a lot of inland lakes as well. And for somebody who grew up in South Louisiana, swimming in brown bayou water, to see water that looked like this was just amazing. The deep blues and the green hues. So I really found myself deciding that I wanted to get back into photography. As a Michigan resident, we experience 4 distinct seasons. And from a photography perspective, fall is definitely my favorite. New England, Vermont, states like that get all the attention as far as fall colors are concerned. But I got to tell you, most years, Michigan falls are just absolutely gorgeous. This particular shot was taken from a boat in the Upper Peninsula. It's the Lake Superior shoreline. You can see the colors there. The inland lakes, you can get a nice smooth lake first thing in the morning and get some beautiful reflection on the fall colors. This is also in the Upper Peninsula near Munising, Michigan. Again, I said we experience all 4 seasons. We get a lot of snow. Where I live, the part of Michigan that I live in, we have an average of about 73 inches a year of snow. This year, we are significantly below that. It looks beautiful when it looks like this. And this happens to be a shot that I took with my cell phone when I was still working on my way to work one day, and I rounded a corner. This is probably less than a mile from my house. And the snow was clinging to those pine trees, and I just had to stop in the middle of the road, jump out and grab a picture. And fortunately, no one came along and took me out in the process. I really consider myself at this point in time very much an opportunistic photographer. I have many interests. Linda talked about my travel. I love to travel internationally and in the US, and bringing my camera along is really important to me. All the shots you see on the screen right now are shots that I've taken when I've traveled, whether that was in Italy or Southern California, Colorado, where the horses were taken. So it's something that I definitely look forward to. People are usually not a focus for me, but I do enjoy street photography, particularly when I'm in one of my favorite places in the world, which is Italy. The 4 images, the center to the left, were all images that I took just on the streets in Italy. I can sit in the center of a piazza and entertain myself for hours just grabbing some street photography pictures. It's not something I ever do in the US, except maybe if I'm in New York. The image on the right was taken in a small village in Zimbabwe last year, and I just had the woman sit next to her kitchen door, and I just loved how the natural light lit her face. At the same time I was taking this picture, Jan, who's on tonight, was taking the same picture of the woman from a different angle, and she likewise got a beautiful shot of this woman. But then there's birds, which is the primary focus of the discussion that we're going to have tonight, and how I got involved in bird photography and my efforts to improve my bird photography. I'll start off by saying I am not a birder. And it's no offense to people here who are birders, but I've been on two kind of official birding walks, and I have to say I was bored. Um, while I like to see the birds, I want mine close up and personal so I can take the picture. This shot, Jan and Denise and I did a walk last year when we were in California, year before last, and all these people were birders, and we were just looking at their backs, and they're pointing at the sky and talking about, oh, it's at 2 o'clock, and the bird's like 100 yards away. And so for me, that's not what I get excited about, just seeing the birds. I get excited about how I can capture a picture of it. So how did I get involved in, and how did I develop this interest in bird photography? I tell people all the time, blame it on the dark-eyed junco. I mentioned that we get about 73 inches of snow a year. This was a winter when we got significantly more than 73 inches, and we had a lot of really big snowfalls. And there was probably about 2 feet of snow on the ground. And I came home from work, and I grabbed my camera, and I wanted to go outside and take a picture actually of my house to send to my friends and family in Louisiana who think I'm absolutely crazy because I still live here, or that I ever lived here at all because of the snow. And I spotted this bird, and I didn't know what it was, but I just loved the way that it contrasted against the snow, and it looked like it had its little tuxedo on. So I grabbed a picture with the camera that I had at the time, which was a Canon 70D with just a simple 18 to 135 millimeter kit lens. And was I that close? No, that's heavily cropped. This is what the picture actually looked like. But once I cropped it and brought it in, I was just taken in by the bird, but clearly I didn't have the right equipment to do bird photography. So it didn't take me long before I went to the camera store and I bought a Sigma 150 to 600. So now I had a lens that could handle it, but the pictures weren't very good because the birds, where I have my bird feeders, in the winter, the shrubbery around there, all the leaves fall off. The birds would grab something and then they would jump back in these shrubs. And so the pictures were very cluttered looking. There wasn't anything pleasing about it. The only thing pleasing was that I got the bird closer to me than what I did with the kit lens. But it still was drawing me in, but I knew that this isn't the way that I wanted to take pictures of the birds. So I didn't necessarily come up with this master game plan at the time, but I knew that I had to do it. If I was going to do it, it had to be better than that. I was feeding them. We all know if you feed them, they'll come. And so this is just an example of two feeders that I had out. And in this 2 shots, I have 4 species of birds. So I was drawing different kinds of birds, but I wasn't really crazy about including the feeder in the shot, including anything man-made in the shot. So I still sort of didn't have a solution to my problem. I had lens, I had feeders. Sometimes the feeder was okay if it helped to tell a story. So in the case of the picture on the left, we have a tufted titmouse who came to the feeder during an ice storm. Ice storms are so devastating, but they're also so beautiful at the same time. And I just like the way this one kind of had this forlorn look on it, as if, come on, give me a break. And then the other one was from a hummingbird shot, a hummingbird feeder. And I just found it humorous that the bird is looking around the feeder, looking to see what's coming from one direction when the bee is kind of sneaking up behind it. So those are 2 cases where I was okay with the fact that the feeders were in there, but I still quite wasn't where I wanted to be. And then began life on the ledge. I had added the summer before a shepherd's hook off of my deck railing in my backyard. And I had a feeder in the backyard, a feeder in the side yard. And I noticed one winter day that the birds were literally lining up on the deck railing, in this case, my ledge. And I had all this activity, all this life on the ledge. And it was like the runway at O'Hare Airport is just one right after the other going into the feeder whenever a place would clear. I'm inside of my house looking at this. So I grab my camera, I hang a blanket up to kind of to hide me in the window. And I raise the window and I stick my lens out and I start taking pictures. And it just worked out so much better because I had a different set of circumstances. My backyard is very wooded, lots of trees, but they're so far away at this point that they go muted, gives it kind of this painterly look. And this was an early snowfall, and the kind of brownish orange color that you see are actually the colors of the leaves at that time of the year. So I felt like, for me, I had just taken a step of improvement in getting these pictures that at least didn't have the limbs or didn't have the feeders in them. So I started, and I was mostly doing Facebook posts at that point in time for my friends and family to see. And I would just always refer to this as my life on the ledge. So the female cardinal, the male gets all the attention because they're so brilliant and they're stunningly beautiful in the snow. But there's just something about the female sometimes that just absolutely pull me in, and how this brilliant red beak is contrasting against the neutral tones in the picture just make her pop. There's the dark-eyed junco. I like this dark-eyed junco picture much better than the other. You can see that there's not as much color in the background, so seasonally more of the leaves have fallen off the trees, just a little slight bit of color in the background. But snowflakes on the face, which to me was creating a really interesting look. I will at times, there's so much activity, they will knock the snow off of that deck railing, and I'll go out there and pick up snow and pile snow back on the deck railing so that I get the snow in the picture, because I really like the way that it looks. Seasonality now, where the trees are, it's green, the trees are out there and they're full, so the background changes completely, and you have this little Carolina wren that's just basking in the morning sun. And the thing I liked most about this picture was that one little feather just kind of sticking up on its head. So I was making progress. And I think the thing that was pulling me in was the fact that when you would get that picture where the bird's personality or an attitude would show through, I never, before I started taking pictures of them and getting better pictures, closer pictures, did I sort of realize that they kind of express these personalities. And again, the female cardinal is very good about that and has a very expressive face. And it's as if she's just looking at me, telling me to back off here. So this is a little Carolina wren, and they're tiny, but they are just full of personality. They're so quirky. They move around and they're jerky. And this particular day, this little Carolina wren just kept hopping up and down the deck railing, and I was able to get a few shots of him or her just kind of like showing off. And then this one to me just was a lot of personality, where it was crouched down. It almost reminds me of like a big cat, like stalking its prey. And it's just, again, the personality of those wrens and how they act. Sometimes even on the deck railing, I was able to capture a sense of movement, and that's when the snow would go flying. And this particular situation, this little tufted titmouse is getting ready to take off. It looks like it's ready to do a 50-yard dash, and the snow starts flying, and it really adds to the sense of movement associated with that. When May rolls around, I'm all about the hummingbirds. That seed feeder off that back railing comes off, and I put the hummingbird feeder up. I'll put a hummingbird feeder up on the side of the house as well because of their competitiveness. But with hummingbirds, I'm really obsessed. When I set in on that first night of happiness hour and Linda asked me about what kind of photography that I liked, I remember my response was, if I could never take pictures of anything the rest of my life but one thing, it would be hummingbirds. And I wished I lived somewhere where I had hummingbirds, lots of hummingbirds, and had them year round. May to October, I start with 2 females and a male, and then at the end of the season, I have, 5 or so that are flitting around. But I just really enjoy taking the pictures. What I like about this picture is the posture, the fact that it's clear and sharp, the fact that the background it is not taking away from it. What I don't like is the fact that it's a feeder shot. So I wanted to resolve the problem and not have the feeders in the shot. So what do? You start planting flowers. You start planting flowers to bring them in so that they can feed off of them. And I try to offer different types of flowers for two reasons. I want to have a good restaurant. I want to give them choices of what they might like to eat. The second reason that I do it, and probably really the most obvious reason that I do it, is I want my pictures to look different. I don't want them to always be feeding on the same flower. So here I have, in the top left, I have zinnias. The bottom left is salvia, and then foxglove on the right. This is a shot taken from inside of my house showing onto the deck. I put these flowers all in either on tables or in a raised planter because I want the blooms to be up above the deck railing level, because I don't want the deck railing in my photographs. You can see the hummingbird feeder hanging there. I shoot a fair number of my pictures of the hummingbirds inside of the house, but I also, as the summer goes along, just because I want to be outside in Michigan summers, because our summers tend to be pretty glorious. And as the summer goes along, I can sit out at the table and also be able to take them when I'm out there. They get more accustomed to me. And especially now with mirrorless cameras and silent shutters, they don't take off the way they would do with the DSLRs. So I went from the feeder shots to being able to get shots like this with having the flowers there. This particular salvia is called Black and Bloom. Some people call it Black and Blue, but it is definitely the variety that my hummingbirds go to more than any of the other flowers that I put out. I always plant the purple ones because they really like them, but I'll also plant either red or a magenta or another color like that, again, just so that my pictures will look different. Zinnias are another flower that I plant, and one of the things I like about the zinnia is that you can isolate a single flower, and it really makes a simple shot. And also typically, the bird then is hovering over the flower instead of coming up underneath it. So it's just an opportunity to get a different perspective and the hummingbird in a different position. This is a sample of kind of a pre-focus plan. Those of you who have attempted to take pictures of hummingbirds or take them know it's hard. It's hard because they move so doggone fast, and just about the time you think you know where they're going to go, they will go someplace else or they'll take off. What I typically do is, when I see them go to, especially the zinnias, I will try to predict and tell which direction that they're moving in. And then I will pick a flower, and I'm just going to focus on that flower. And I'm going to hope that that's where the hummingbird goes, so that I can be pre-focused, so that when they land on it, I can start firing away, shooting as many frames per second as I can. And in this case, the gamble paid off. It went to the flower that I was hoping for. The darkness you see in the background, it's simply the fact that my lot is wooded. There are trees all around the perimeter of my property. And so it goes dark in the daytime with all the shade from the trees. So it really helps to just make a good background for the hummingbird pictures. This is the foxglove. The flower itself is so pretty, but I have to say I've gotten mixed results with them appealing to the hummingbirds. I've planted them the last 2 years. I don't think I'm going to plant them this year. I'm going to try something else, just because I don't get that many pictures of them going to it. If they're going to the foxglove, they're sneaking when I'm not around. This is another form of salvia. I don't know what the name of it is, and I've only had it 1 year, and I've been trying to find it since. Last summer, I couldn't find it. And if somebody knows exactly what the name of it is, please let me know. But I do know that it is a type of salvia. But at the end of the season, it goes to seed, and it grows on this long, tall stalk. So it's at the end of the season, when it goes to the seed, what I found was that the goldfinch just devour them. So it was another opportunity for me to get a different type of bird You can see again with the distance that the trees are in the background and the light, I was able to get some really nice bokeh on this shot. And I was just glad to have a bird on a flower that was different. And of course, there's another benefit to planting the flowers on in your area, on your deck, in your yard, and that is that you're also going to draw the other pollinators, whether it be butterflies or bees. So I think if everybody is in this room is probably here for one reason. We want to learn, we want to grow, we want to continuously improve our photography. And while I knew I was getting better shots with my life on the ledge, I wanted to improve more. I didn't know exactly at that point in time how I was going to do it, particularly with my own yard photography. And then I had a Christmas present that I am coined the best Christmas present ever. A very close friend of mine, mother of my oldest goddaughter, gave me the most thoughtful Christmas gift one year that just slayed me. And she bought time with three photographers that she got online and identified that were good wildlife photographers, good bird photographers, and bought time that either I could use as Zoom mentoring or I could apply the money towards one of their workshops. The three photographers, Lee Hoy, who Linda was just talking about a little while ago, who's going to be the speaker on April 10th, was one. Melissa Grew, who is based out of upstate New York, and then Alan Murphy, which we heard a little bit about Alan last week when Tom spoke. Again, I was just absolutely floored. I decided with Lee Hoy, he was at that point in time giving some hummingbird photography workshops out of his home in his backyard. He lives in Fort Davis, Texas. I got this Christmas gift in December. I retired the end of March, the following, just a few months later, and I attended the hummingbird workshop with Lee in August of that year. It was the first photography workshop that I'd ever done. And I didn't know what to expect. Lee is very technical, and I think we'll see that whenever he talks to us. He's really into understanding your equipment and using that technology. And some of the things that we really talked about in that workshop was using full manual mode. Prior to this, I had always taken the hummingbird pictures with a shutter priority setting, and he talked to me through on why that wasn't the best. Introduced me to the use of the histogram. I had never used the histogram on my camera, and he introduced me to that concept. I'll be honest and say that I was too nervous to try it with only having 2 days in the workshop, that I didn't want to devote all this time trying to learn the histogram. I wanted to take a bunch of hummingbird pictures, which I did. But he introduced the concept to me, and now I feel comfortable with it, and I do all my exposure readings now based off of the use of a histogram. And I don't know that I would have ever done that if I didn't have that workshop with Lee. So maybe I'll get the opportunity to thank him for that in a few weeks. I've been thinking I needed to send him an email and thank. And then he talked again with hummingbird photography, something I was already doing, and that was that spot pre-focus to get a good shot of the hummingbird. I had 2 one-hour sessions with Melissa Grew. My friend who gave me the gift said, after talking to Melissa Grew, she said to me, she's a badass. And Melissa's incredibly interesting. She shoots wildlife all over the world. She's very approachable, easy to talk to. Prior to the first one, she had me send her some images to review, showing because she knew I wanted to specifically talk about bird photography. And so we spent some time reviewing those images, and she talked me through it. And then because she shoots so many birds at her home, she talked to me about suggestions and asked me about the different types of feeders that I was using. At that point in time, I did a platform feeder. I was using a seed feeder and a suet. So we talked about the different feeders and the different kinds of birds that each type of feeder drew in. some equipment suggestions, and then she talked to me because she lives in a place with cold winters about the importance of a water source in winter. I always, when I kind of clean my yard out for the year, would take my bird baths up, put them away, and they didn't come out. And, you know, during the course of the year, when my Life on the Ledge shots were going on, I would see the birds eating snow. So I'm like, well, that's where they get their water for the winter. But after that conversation, the first winter, I bought a heated bird bath that I just referred to as their spa. And for the first time ever, I had bluebirds that I saw in my yard because they were coming to that water source in the winter. So I'm on my second winter of having bluebirds. And I definitely have 2 pair this year, and I'm wanting them to move in and settle down. I see them almost every day, but they haven't moved into the condo that I got for them yet. I thought that robins left this area in the winter. That was my sign that spring was coming, was when I would see robins running all over the ground. But after I put this heated water source up, there was a day whenever I looked out and there were 5 or 6 robins hanging out on the edge of this thing. And I couldn't believe it. So by the time I got my camera and got back out, the only choice I had was to shoot through the window for this shot because I was afraid the noise would chase the one remaining away. So I took a few shots, and I just like the fact that there's the water dripping on this one. So again, normally I don't want to take something with a man-made object in it, but there are times when I like say, it's worth it. I'll take that image. The fourth professional photographer was a 1 hour Zoom mentoring session with Alan Murphy. This guy's awesome. I mean, he is really fantastic. He's not only published a great deal, this is a magazine cover of his, but he was so prepared for the 1 hour with me. Just as with Melissa, he had me send in, I think I sent him like 15 images or something. And we went through those images, and not only did he talk to me about, you know, whatever cropping or whatever, he went and took the images that I sent them and put them in his software that he used. I know it was Photoshop or Lightroom, and he improved my images and then showed me how even the images that I shot could be made better. And one of the suggestions that he made was adding catch lights if the image of the bird doesn't have catch lights in it. So I took one of my hummingbird shots that I took out in California one year, and I was looking at it, and the bird's eye is just completely black. There's kind of like no life in it, but through simple editing, just the adding of a catch light just seemed to brighten it up. It may be a little easier to see. This is a shot that I took just this past weekend when it was snowing. We had about 5 inches of snow last Friday, and I got a dark-eyed junco, and there was a little bit of catch light in the eye, but not significantly very much, and it just looked a little bit flat. So I use Luminar Neo. And I don't know how Alan did it in Photoshop. I can't tell you how he did it. I can only tell you that I used the cloning tool, and I went in and I cloned some of the white area of the bird, and then put my brush very small, took the sliders down for softness and strength way down to about 15%. I usually do that between 15 and 20%, and use the brush tool and just sort of painted in that catch light. So you can just see that side-by-side difference. And I think it really helps to make the image better. In addition, I mean, beforehand, Alan knew that I wanted to talk about how to improve my own backyard bird photography. And we talked about building perches and a lot about bird behavior. But he then shared some of his own images with me. And I'm not saying these are the exact images. I took these off of his website just recently. But he showed me a picture similar to this. And then he said, now let me show you how I took that picture in my backyard in Houston, Texas. And so then he showed me a shot that was pulled back, and there were all these tripods and these branches and these perches that he had built being held by tripods. He buys cheap tripods that the handles are open, and he sticks things down in there. He uses Christmas tree holders to hold things up. And so he builds these perches and these props in his backyard, and you would never know that these shots were taken in, a major suburban area. He has since moved to Colorado but I know he's doing the same thing. And I've seen enough of his videos to know how he builds these perches and how much time he spends in making it. But what that did was it made me, in that 1 hour, I left so enthusiastic about if he can do this in his backyard in Houston. I have a backyard. I have a nice backyard. It's nice and big, and I have trees all over the place. So what can I do to improve my bird photography and get some of these shots? So I took things that I was inspired by all three of the photographers, but in particular with the conversation with Alan, I wanted to come up with a game plan. By then it was October. It's getting close to the end of the season. This picture was not taken in October. This is a full summer shot. But I wanted to figure out, was there something that I could do yet in the fall and something that might carry over then into the winter for me? So I go back behind the tree line in this shot. So my property extends beyond that tree line. So when I go beyond my lawn into that wooded area, there's all kind of trees that have fallen down in storms and age or for whatever the reason is. And so I had this Saturday when I went out there and I just started pulling limbs out of the woods. If my neighbors were watching, they probably thought that I was crazy, but I start pulling out limbs. And in particular, I'm looking for things that have some lichen on it, something that has some interest to it. I kind of like my limbs just like I do my English muffins, with lots of nooks and crannies. So I'm looking for those things and I'm pulling all these limbs out. Then, of course, I had to go to Lowe's and buy a little chainsaw, because then I wanted to cut them to a certain size, because my idea was that I wanted to try to build something that would attract the birds that I could use not only year round, but particularly in the winter when I couldn't be out in the yard. So I haul these limbs up and I zip tie them to my deck railing. And I start stuffing suet in the nooks and crannies of the limbs and decide that I'm going to just see what happens. The feeders are out there. They're still coming. The hummingbird feeders were gone at that particular point in time. The seed feeders are back out. I'm going to see what's going to happen. So it's the afternoon. It's college football season. LSU's getting ready to play Alabama. I'm done with my little project. I'm going inside. I will pick it back up and maybe do some more things later. But I go inside. It's a beautiful day. I have the windows open. And not 30 minutes later, I took this picture. I had suet and seeds up in there. This was the top of one of the limbs. You can see the lichen. You can see the fall colors were giving me this wonderful background. And I was just thrilled, because with not a whole lot of effort, I had instantly improved my pictures from now beyond the lead shots, beyond my deck railing shots, by doing this and making them much more natural looking. So I had gone from the beginning, something that looked like this, to things that more looked like this. No feeders, no limbs, and I was really excited. I looked for limbs that had surface interest to them, so I had fungi on them. It was the time of the year that the bittersweet was out, so I gathered some bittersweet that I knew was near my old office and brought it back and wired it to the limb. And I think maybe it was the very first snowfall, this little tufted titmouse landed on the limb of the bittersweet. And so those things add surface interest to it. And I was really enjoying it. Those of you who know the behavior of the nuthatch know that they are generally face down, and you'll be able to figure out that I rotated in my cropping. I rotated this image 90 degrees counterclockwise, because I thought those little seed-like grasses that were growing on that were really interesting, and the different colors of the lichen and the texture of the wood. So I just felt like it looked like he was on a hunt for a bug. So I like the fact that I turned that one. Some of the limbs I get have some smaller limbs coming out of them so that they're good for perches. for single perches. And again, the difference between what I get with my fall colors and then more of a winter look on the right, but still with the use of the lichen to give it texture. This was one of the shots that I showed Alan, so it was before I started putting the limbs up, that I had taken it at another spot in my yard. And he goes, "Do you know what bird that is?" And I'm like, "No." And he said, "It's a black Burnian warbler." And he said, "In my entire career, I've never photographed a black Burnian warbler." And he said, "I can't believe that you have one." And I was like, embarrassed to tell him that I thought it was a goldfinch. So again, not a birder, but by doing these things and using the limbs that I had on the other things, you can get some nice little portraits of the birds. And I think this little tufted titmouse is just really sweet, sitting there. The snow is falling, life is good, somebody's feeding me, and you've got the nice interest of what's going on. We all know as photographers, different light can yield different appearances. The blue in this is just literally the sky coming through. I had gone out, there was a limb sticking up, there were some vines on another tree. I went out and I pulled those, cut those off, wrapped it around, and whether or not that adds to it, I'm not really sure, but I'm sitting in my house when I took this picture, and it looks like I was in a forest somewhere. And I'm sitting on my living room floor with the window up and using my house as a blind. And I've just found it to be very rewarding that I can create these and sit in my house and do it. I use the suet. Again, I have different spots that I'll plug in the suet. Some people would say, "Well, don't show a picture of them with the suet," but I thought he looked like he was just acting like he was getting, the great escape after he found the world's best treasure. And again, this is another picture that I rotated 90 degrees because I liked how it looked rotating that. I make my own suet. That was also something that Alan and I talked about. He basically used the same ingredients. I was not using lard at that time, and he suggested the use of the lard to give the birds more fat, particularly in the winter. So these are the ingredients I use. I use peanut butter. I get some I chop some peanuts that I buy at the birds seed store, the farm store here, lard, and then I'll use cornmeal and grits to just give it more texture and kind of bind it all together. He used cornmeal, but being a grit myself, which if you don't know what that is, that's a girl raised in the South is a grit. I put grits in there too. So, because I think my bird should have some grits. And I'll make a big batch and I'll refrigerate it, and then I'll use it over a period of time. If you put out seeds, if you put out suet, you're going to have other little friends. And I spend a fair amount of time chasing away those little friends because I want to take pictures of the birds. But when I looked out and I saw this little one sitting there perched on, this is the same limb that tufted titmouse sat on in the snow. It was just as cute as it could be. I think when the squirrels are this age and they have what I call their white eyeliner, they're just adorable. So I wasn't about to chase it away. I was going to photograph it. But I spent a fair amount of time today annoyed with the squirrels because every time I would put some things out and go back inside, I would turn around and it's like they are sitting in the trees with binoculars waiting. And as soon as I leave, here they come. When you can capture some sense of motion with the wings spread out, I get really excited. It takes a fair amount of effort to do it. I wish I was better at it. It's significantly more challenging than when they're just sitting there perched on a limb. But it's a lot of fun. What you don't see here in this particular shot, there was another bird that had come in, and the downy woodpecker is reacting to the other bird, which was another woodpecker. But I got the wings spread out. It's easy to get the wings clipped because you never know. You anticipate how wide that spread might be if they fly. But that's just the way it is. You're going to get some clipped wings. I'm waiting desperately for the pileated to show up. I know they're around, but I have yet to see them on the the limbs that I've attached to my deck railing. Here's another little nuthatch a tufted titmouse. You can see both feet. It's pushed off. It's left the limb. It's taking off. It's got its treat. Only one wing spread. And I just thought that was one of the things that made this particular shot interesting, was the fact that it was only one wing. Same thing, you've got a nuthatch here that has left both wings spread out. And these were pictures that I would never have gotten had I not, talked to Alan probably and started thinking about how can I continue to improve. Here's one where the wings are clipped. I was just really disappointed that the wings were clipped, but the background just works so beautifully with this bird, with the colors of the underwing side of this tufted titmouse. And that's not artificial in the background. That's just whatever my yard was looking at that particular point in time, and the blue coming through on the color. So that's the thing about this particular shot that I really like a lot. Don't get frustrated. You're going to get many more missed shots than you do of the good ones. It's just the nature of the beast when you're doing bird photography, and especially when you're trying to get them in action. It's digital. We delete them. We move on. And sometimes we get both wings spread in the frame, and then you're happy about it. Doesn't have the most pleasing background because of the time of year that it was. I didn't have all of the green. Those are the limbs of some of the trees, or the trunks of some of the trees. But I still like the picture because I got the wing activity. And sometimes they just look like little bullets. They've taken off and they've just pushed off, and the wings haven't even spread yet. And they're just a little bullet flying through, or maybe they're doing a little lift off. I was really surprised when I saw this one and saw how this little chickadee it was like it was lifting up vertically instead of taking off. It's a little tight as far as the image goes, and it would have been an awful shot probably if the wings had started to spread. But you got the interest of the wood and the snow on it, and that picture just kind of makes me smile. So then I go to what's next in my backyard photography, because we all want to continuously improve. This is a shot that I took during a workshop last April at Laguna Seca. And each of the blinds that we shoot, whether it be the morning blind or the afternoon blind, had a water feature to it. And I was just thrilled to take pictures of the birds in the water bathing. This is a cowbird that was just, to me, so expressive. A cowbird is not something I usually get very excited about. And I don't like the fact that they lay their eggs in other birds' nests and have somebody else raise their babies. But I love this picture and the enthusiasm of the bird in the water. So it inspired me when I came back, to start thinking about, can I build my own water feature? I got a big backyard. I got water source out there where I water the flowers. And so I wanted to get reflections. I wanted to get them in the water. So I started trying to come up with an idea, and thankfully I have a very nice neighbor who is handy and has saws and is just a wonderful man. And so I sketched out an idea, and I took it over to his house and said, "You think you could build this for me? I feel like Linda Nickell now. Can you do this for?" And so I asked my neighbor, and he goes yeah, I can do that. And I have some scrap wood. So it cost me taking his wife and him to dinner, and he built me, what you see on the left is my little frame and my idea. What you see on the right is the world's ugliest stain, that when I bought the stain, it was supposed to be some kind of oak stain, and it turned very yellow. But the reason that I wanted it in two different pieces was I needed to be able to handle it, to move it myself, and not have to have somebody come over and help me move the thing. So I had him build it in two different pieces. And then I started building a structure. Hopefully you can see it around it, where on three sides, I put smaller limbs. It's a metal fence post that me and my zip tied the limbs to it, because I wanted to give the birds a landing spot before they got to the water aspect of it. I lined the top portion of it with the same material you use if you're going to do a fish pond in your yard. Started adding some stones and gathering some things, try to create something that would have a natural appearance to it. With the water, you can't just use the full size hose that you would have from your regular garden hose. So I had to buy some pieces. I found a really helpful person at Lowe's who helped me identify the pieces that I needed to step that down from the size of the hose to the 1/4 inch pipe. And then I ran that alongside. You can kind of see it in the image on the left. You can see the hose coming up and then it goes clear, and that went up, and then I connected it zip tied across the top piece because I wanted to have a water source for running water. So hopefully you can hear the water running. And it's one of the things that I learned at the Laguna Seca workshop is it's that sound that draws the birds in, particularly if they're migrating birds. They don't know exactly where the water sources are. So if they hear it, it will draw them in. So I wanted to get that water source as well. Ultimately, I wanted to create something like this is a Laguna Seca shot again. They had these water features that just look so natural, and they had kind of different layers to it. This is an Audubon's Oriole that I took at that Laguna Seca workshop. And so that was kind of my guide of, what I was trying to recreate. I don't think I accomplished that. But I'm working on it. You can see I put a bird feeder there. So again, they would come into the proximity, be aware that it was going on, what was going on, and that there was water there. I started seeing them drinking water out of it. So I knew that the birds were going to it. And I was still in the process of kind of creating this thing. I used the drill in some places and put some holes in it so that across that piece across the top, that they would go there and be attracted to the suet. So I was putting their food source, something that would attract them out there. And then the best angle for me to shoot was clearly going to be in the middle of my backyard. Well, I couldn't stand out there in the middle of the backyard, so this project required me to buy a little tent. So I found this little tent at a sporting goods store, happened to be on sale, got it for about $75. Easy. I can set it up easily myself, no problem, up and down. I can take it in and out. You can see sort of the relative distance that I have it from the water source. And I started noticing that the birds were paying attention to it. They were checking it out. And they were doing this before I completely had it staged and had things exactly ready to go. And it is definitely, I ended the summer last year with it being a work in progress. The top picture is a Laguna Seca shot. I want to be able to get the shots that are at the right angle that pick up the reflection. I've got to make some adjustments this summer because I wasn't getting the proper angle to get those reflections. I probably need to take some of my rocks out. So I'm looking to refine it in 2024. It's definitely a work in progress. But I just want to get to the point where in my own backyard, I can capture something that is similar to this, have the reflection, or catch them bathing. And if I could just figure out how to get painted buntings to move to Michigan, I would be really, really happy. I just wrap up a little bit on workshops and say, if bird photography is something that you're interested in, I really would recommend that you do a workshop. I've now done 2. I'm going to do my 3rd one this summer in Idaho. And if you can, take it outside of where you live. So you get to see different species of birds, and you get to take a ton of image. So you get a lot of practice. And this happens to be the favorite shot that I took from my Lee Hoy workshop, my favorite hummingbird shot. I had never seen a rufous other than in a picture. So to be able to photograph a rufous hummingbird was just really exciting. This was a calliope. We also had the Lucifer, which it's really hard to find from what I understand. So we were able to take Lucifer. And if I hadn't done the Laguna Seca workshop, I would never have taken this picture, never photographed a painted bunting. So it was just really exciting to me to have that opportunity. Are the green jays. Linda and I talked about the fact that the green jays don't even make it as high as Austin in Texas. They stay really, really close to the border. In this workshop with Laguna Seca being just outside of McAllen, they have quite a few green jays. So it's really a lot of fun. We did raptors one day, and we're fortunate to have a couple of Harris's hawks that showed up and entertained us. And just the fact that you can have just something that's like an ordinary cardinal that I have plenty of here, but just in the setting. And this was another shot that I thought just really showed kind of an attitude. He just looks like he's tough. He thinks he's really tough. So even birds that weren't unique to me were a lot of fun. And this was the brown thrasher. So most of those birds I don't get here, and I didn't see them before. So if you have an interest, I encourage you to take a workshop if you can, because I think it may really hook you and get you really excited about it. And I'm just really thrilled that it may have all started with the dark-eyed junco, but I'm still taking pictures of birds in the snow. I took this one last weekend when we had 5 inches of snow. And I have a landscaping stone in my side yard. And I said, something's going to land on that. So I opened a door, not the main garage door, but a side door. I opened it just a little bit, laid on the cold garage floor with a camouflage poncho over me, and just laid there and waited. And this gal showed up. So I was really happy that she showed up. So I thank everybody for your time and listening. I hope this motivates you, if you haven't done bird photography, maybe to start thinking about it. And thanks, Linda, for inviting me. And I think more than anything, Linda, thank you for the happiness hour. It's just amazes me what you're able to do as far as attracting the wonderful speakers that you do. I know I told you that I was like, I'm not worthy. But thanks so much for truly bringing happiness to us each and every Wednesday.
Well, you're very, very welcome. Let me get you to take down your screen. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy. When you said I'm like, you're not worthy. I'm like, yeah, you are. I see your photos. I wouldn't, I know what I'm going to get. What I don't know is the stories behind those images and the journeys that people take to get to where they are. I mean, I knew that you had a very large backyard, but I did not know that you're making your pond and you're pitching like a hide, because that's what they call them. It's a hide. And this was fun to kind of get a peek of what you're doing in Michigan to be the crazy bird lady in your neighborhood.
I'm sure they do say that about me.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, 2 things. There's one question in here. So let me ask you. This is from Kathy, who says, anybody in this room, if you get to Idaho, please let her know. She's a birder and she would love to meet you at one of her favorite spots. So her question is, can you tell her what settings that you're using to capture the wings on your hummingbirds?
Typically, I try not to shoot a hummingbird less than 1/4000th of a second. It's really hard sometimes with the lighting conditions to do that. It's a little bit easier now that with denoise software that we're able to push those ISOs up. But I generally am trying to shoot. I am shooting full manual now. And the aperture varies depending on kind of what's going on, but because I like that if I'm shooting them in my yard for that background to go, out of focus, maybe at 5.6, but I try not to get too much lower than that because they move so quickly.
Right.
But the shutter speed 1/4000th is about as low as I like to go.
Okay. That's helpful. Okay, so this is from our sweet friend Valerie Hoffman, who says, I hate to break it to her, but I think she's a birder at this point.
Um,
think she's right. I think she's right, Donna. You really, I mean, there's the birders. I mean, yeah, you're a birder.
Well, it's interesting when I was with Lee Hoy, because he was, before he started doing, I forgot the company he's working with now.
This was Wild Side.
And he had his own thing. He would lead
Right.
birding trips and he would also do bird photography trips. And he said he learned early on not to put the people together. If he wanted birders, he took just birders. And if he was taking bird photographers, just because you can't make both of them happy at the same time.
Yeah, you cannot. I've traveled with both of those people and they're not fun. They're not fun at all. All right,
Maybe
so
if she comes to Texas, you can get Valerie Hoffman shooting birds.
she is not anti-birds. She just doesn't have the patience. She needs them to be close and cooperative. So she just doesn't have the patience. It's not that she can't. She's just impatient. All right. Her question to you though is, do you ever use flash with your hummingbirds?
I did at the workshop at Lee's
Lee.
workshop. He had, I think it was 4 or 5 off camera
Flashes, yeah.
flashes,
Yeah.
but I don't. The ones that I do in my yard, I don't use flash, which is why the need for the fast shutter speed. You can, I think when we were shooting at Lee's, I want to say we were shooting at 250.
Okay. Really 250 or
Yeah, with the flash. I think that's what it was. I was surprised at how slow it was, and we were able to capture them.
Yeah, there's a whole art to that. That's a whole nother level. Okay, I'm going to share the chat with you because there are a lot of nice messages in there. I think that you'll enjoy them. So I think the purple salvia that you were wondering what the name is, I think it's mealy cup sage. So look that up, see if it's the same kind. But immediately I'm like, I have that in my yard, and I think that's the mealy cup. So maybe
Okay, I'll have
it's
to
not.
take a look at that. I know I
Yeah.
want to find it again.
Yeah, it's kind of very common around here. So shouldn't be hard. If not, let me know. I'll ship you some. Well,
Okay.
thank you for doing this. I know you're retired. You've got all the time in the world. And the people that are retired, I think they're just sitting, on the couch and watching TV and eating bonbons. But people that are retired are actually busier than I am. I mean, there's always something to do. There's always, something that you want to do. And taking the time and putting a presentation together takes time, and it's not always fun to do, but it was delightful to hear your stuff, and I was cheering you on because you have some of the same birds that I do. And I can tell you, when we had our little snow apocalypse that people were calling it, I had snow up like a foot high at my back door, which is very uncommon here in Texas. And a dark-eyed junco showed up, and I took way too many because I'd never seen that bird before. And I still remember it because it was just one of those really charming little birds with pink lips. And I thought, gosh, what are you? And
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. And I mean, I had to send my photo to somebody and say, what is this? And I've never seen them since. So it was just one of those weird, snowstorms that blew blew birds, uh, you know, to my back door. But it was a lot of fun to
It
shoot.
amazes me that they come here. I only have them in the winter, that they winter here and then they go back to Canada. Like, why wouldn't you keep flying? Why are you stopping here? I mean, I'm glad you do, but it's still cold.
They hear the suet's pretty good there. All right, Donna, thank you so much for doing this for us. I so appreciate it. All right, we're off next week, but join us on April 10th when Lee Hoy joins us to share his presentation, Making the Most of the Wildlife Photography Experience. So until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.